Brandon. The one thing in the future is just make sure that's on mute. Yeah, check it afterwards on YouTube.
You good to go?
Very good.
Okay, we will call the June 27, 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Mr. Suter, will you take roll call for us?
I'm gonna ask Ms. Whitten to do that.
Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
Supervisor Day. Supervisor Ayers.
Here.
Supervisor Lyons.
Here.
Chairman McDaniel.
Here. We will now have a prayer for the board followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Those attending are not required to participate. If you'd like to join us, please stand.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we have to meet here as the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors. We pray for those that are sick and unable to be with us this evening. We pray that you'll heal them. Lord, guide, direct us in all the decisions that we make. Forgive us our many sins. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will hold citizen comments near the beginning of the meeting. We will do our best to take the citizen comment remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comment. To join by telephone, you may dial into one of the numbers listed on the county website. The webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise your hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you are calling in by telephone. Are there any changes to the agenda for tonight? Okay. Any recognitions, presentations?
No, sir.
All right, citizens' comments. At this time, we welcome any comments. Has anyone signed up? Is anyone online wishing to address the board?
I don't see any hands raised.
Anyone present wishing to address the board? All right, we will move right along. You have been given a copy of the June 13, 2022 regular meeting minutes. Any questions, comments, revisions? If not, is there a motion to approve as presented?
Yes, make that motion.
And second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Abstain.
and the chair abstain as well. Was not present at the meeting. Let's see here. Consideration of the school appropriation resolution. Mr. Suter?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Finance Director Ashton Harrison is unable to make it. He's under the weather. In his absence, I'll be presenting multiple items for the board's consideration. And the first one is the consideration of the school appropriation resolution in the amount of $89,408. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from the board? Comments?
I move we approve as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
and chair votes yes as well. We have the county closeout of fiscal year 21-22.
Yes, this is the second item for your consideration, and that's approval of the county's appropriation resolution and payment of the bills. This is the last bills list of the fiscal year, and the total amount requested for approval was $552,856.60. A copy of the bills list is attached. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Otherwise, I'd ask for approval of the attached resolution to pay the bills.
Is this the listing of bills thus far, or will this motion and carry through to the end of the month for any bills that may come in?
That depends, probably, it's to the bills that are in the list right now. If we do have any outstanding bills, they will probably be paid next month and they will be in arrears unless, and will, the auditors will memo them back.
Okay.
And then unless there is some sort of emergency, because keep in mind, you all don't have a first meeting of the month. So if there's something that really needs to be paid, typically I work through the finance committee to do that.
Is there any questions for Mr. Suter on the county closeout of fiscal year 21-22? So motion to approve
So moved.
and second.
Second.
All right, Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and Chair votes yes as well. We have approval of payment of final 2022 payroll.
Yes, this is the third item under the finance package, and it's the improvement of the final 2021-22 payroll. An action that is taken annually, and it's a requirement by the audit.
Is there any questions for Mr. Suter? Is there a motion to approve? And second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well. Now we have appropriation of the 2022-2023 county budget. Mr. Suter?
Yes, this is basically a request to appropriate the funds that you, from the budget that you approved. The following amounts by category: the general fund, $57,543,833. The construction project fund, $266,834. Capital purchases fund, $388,170, and the ARPA fund, American Rescue Act Fund, of $4,336,461. And of course, those monies have not been fully designated. In fact, a small amount of them have been designated so far. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. This is the budget that the board approved.
Any questions for Mr. Suter?
Nope.
Motion to approve
So moved.
and second.
Second.
All right, Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and Chair votes yes as well. We have appropriation of the FY 2023 school division budget.
Yes, obviously their budget was a little bit delayed based on the state, but did a good job, got us the budget, and it's the same, it's very similar. The request is to appropriate by category. Instruction, $24,529,021. Administration and health, $2,162,138. People transportation, $2,870,406. Operation and maintenance, $3,545,855. Facilities, 20 million. Debt service, 3 million. I'm sorry, 20,000 facilities, not 20 million. Debt service, 3,958,062. Technology, 1,627,047. That the total appropriation there is $38,712,000, $712,529. And then the total cafeteria fund is $1,150,109.
Any questions for Mr. Suter on that? Is there a motion to approve
So moved.
and second?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. We have the Ramkishna subdivision review, Econo Lane, two proposed lots in general business zoning district. Mr. Sladen, are you online to help us with this?
I am, yes, sir. And I think Mr. Orson, Russ Orson's in attendance as well. If I could share my screen. Bear with me here.
Chris, I do not see him in attendance.
All right, bear with me here. If he may have thought it was 6 o'clock because he is used to coming to public hearings. Would y'all like to proceed with the action or proceed with the item and see if he comes, or would y'all like to wait till after 6?
Let's go ahead and proceed. And if there's any questions, we can delay if we need to.
Okay. All right, this is a subdivision for Ram Krishna LLC subdivision review. I'm going to start use my highlighter as a laser pointer. So in orange here is the property under the subdivision process this evening. Mr. Russ Orson with Perkins and Orson has submitted an application for a 2-lot subdivision on the south side of Econo Lane. Econo Lane is further identified as Route 739. The existing parcel as highlighted here in orange that goes around here, some of it goes slightly off the screen, is per tax records is 28.95 acres. And of course is owned by Ram Krishna LLC, further identified as tax map number 61 A2-4-2. As far as the subdivision itself, excuse me, I'm gonna back up a little bit. As the subdivision agent, I have the administrative approval to do 1 lot per calendar year. Prior to last year, I think it actually was, this acreage was cut out for, and the site plan has been approved for Dunkin' Donuts. So that subdivision had already gone through. So the subdivision under question this evening, to get everyone oriented a little bit further, this is going to be Econo Lane. This is the Dunkin' Donuts parcel that was just stated that was previous approved. So on tonight's agenda, it's a 2-lot subdivision. It will create a 1.56 acre parcel here, and then additional 3.45 acre parcel along Econo Lane, which that 3.45 acre parcel is here. The property is located in the general business zoning district. That's the B1 zoning district. A true hotel has been proposed and the site plan has been approved on the 3.45 acre parcel, again, in this location. Excited to say that that's anticipated to start construction later this summer, early spring. A site plan has not been submitted for the 1.56 acre parcel here, but hope to have some good news in the near future for all. The subdivision and process includes the Planning Commission making a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Once the Board of Supervisors approves the final plat, staff will be able to approve the 2 lots. With that, this is just subdivision, or this is just subdivision approval. It does not require a public hearing. And so this portion of the project does not include a public hearing. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and answering questions the board may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Sladen?
And so indicated in the recommendation, staff is unaware of any ordinance or resolution that's required. So it would just be an action of the board, a motion second, and action of the board to approve it. Once y'all approve it, I'll be able to, as the subdivision agent, I'll be able to approve the plat essentially tomorrow, I believe.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
and chair votes yes as well. Let's see here, appointments. We're still looking for a RARO board member,
No luck.
still looking. So we'll hopefully have something more on that in a month or two. And at this time, it's 5:45. We will break until 6 o'clock, at which time we will begin public hearings.
Okay, you. Hold on, somebody's. Okay. Don't know. Is that any better? Absolutely not.
Ms. Huffman?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as discussed at the last meeting, I've prepared an ordinance to impose a revenue share of $1,400 per megawatt for 5 megawatt or less projects. It actually covers all projects with certain exemptions. But for the county, it's particularly important as it relates to the 5 or less, because those are the projects that Rockbridge County seems to be getting. I have made a couple of minor revisions to it since you looked at it last. In the section 25-271, I added the reference to the section that removes the exemption, which brought this forward. It's effective July 1, 2022.
In the attachment that I'm looking at, and maybe I'm looking at it incorrectly, but it says it has effective date of July 1, 2020.
Second line, paragraph A.
Not mine.
I'm looking at it through board docs.
Are you looking at B?
Section A, 25-271A.
271A. The
Oh, yeah.
enabling legislation was originally adopted in 2020.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
The part that can apply to the 5 megawatts or less projects was adopted effective 2022. So to clarify that old ordinance that I had originally drafted, I added the section enabling it to be applicable effective July 1, 2022.
Okay.
The other change in section 25-272B2, I've added again that code section that makes all this apply to the 5 megawatt or less projects. So I added 58.1, 2606.1. And then the last thing was, we previously had in 25-273 revenue share rate, we had a paragraph B, the exemption for solar photovoltaic electric energy projects greater than 5 megawatts as provided in Code of Virginia 58.13660 as amended shall be 100% of the assessed value. That really doesn't apply to the revenue share rate, so I deleted that. That was a carryover from a ordinance I was using for drafting, and I didn't catch it the first time. So that's been removed. Does anybody have any questions? Then it's been advertised for public hearing this evening.
Is there any questions for open public hearing? Okay. At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone signed up to speak? Is there any written comments that need to be read in?
I've not received any.
Is there anyone online wishing to address the board?
Doesn't look like it.
Is there anyone in person who didn't have the opportunity to sign up wishing to address the board? Okay, and we will close the public hearing. Is there any board discussion on this issue?
I just like to thank Ms. Huffman for working on it. It's something I've been concerned about since the 2020, when they had this exemption, for the smaller projects, that it's all we were getting. So it was frustrating to feel that our citizens might not get as much out of it as some others. So I think this is a help for me in my thinking of future projects. So I appreciate it. I think it's a good thing.
Any other discussion? Is there a motion to approve as presented
So moved.
and a second?
Second?
Okay. Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and chair votes yes as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. Next, we have the Rusty Roost Farm LLC application for special exception permit for a campground in an agricultural and general uses A2 zoning district. Mr. Sladen, are you online to help us with this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation. Allow me to share my screen. All right, and we do have in attendance the owner of the property, Mr. Larry Lang, via phone. He couldn't join us physically, but was able to join us via phone. So if we could allow him to speak at this time, I'll go through my brief PowerPoint presentation and turn the floor over to the owner, Mr. Lang. Again, this is Rusted Roost Farm LLC, special exception permit to operate a campground in the agricultural and general use districts. That's going to be the A2 zoning district. Some on the property. Property is identified. I'm going to pull my pointer back out. Bear with me here. Outlined in magenta here on your screen on the right. Identified as 100 Equus Loop, Natural Bridge, Virginia, owned by Rusty Roost Farm LLC. Tax map number is 97-4-B, and it consists of the property under consideration this evening consists of 50.28 acres per tax records. Again, in the agricultural and general use districts. Rusty Roost Farm also currently owns adjacent property to the north that is in this area here, not part of the application, but worth noting they own that additional acreage to the north that consists of 79.54 acres per tax records. Per the special exception proposal itself, per section 603.03-15 of the County of Rockbridge Land Development Regulations, campgrounds are used by special exception in the A2 zoning district. Per section 302.34 of the regulations, campgrounds are defined as any plot, ground used, maintained, or held out to the public wholly or in part as temporary accommodations for tents, expandable camp trailers, travel trailers, converted buses or trucks, or other such devices that may be developed and marketed for camping, whether publicly or privately owned, and whether such use or accommodations are granted for free of charge or for compensation. At their June 8th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, they held its public hearing and have recommended approval of the special exception application with the following conditions. Number one, substantial compliance with the site map titled Rusted Roost Farm LLC. That was the development plan on this previous page that shows the outline of the property and shows out the 255 by approximately 255 by 130 foot camping area in this location. Substantial compliance with that plan. Number two, campground is limited to 2 camping spots to include recreational vehicles and or primitive camping. That would be a total of 2 spots utilized for either one or both. Number 3, the use of portable generators is prohibited on board, or RV or built-in RV generators are permitted. And number 4, the campground is limited to 4 vehicles, is not to exceed 10 people. And number 5, apologize, I have these misnumbered. It actually should be number 5, approval contingent upon final VDOT, Office of Fire Rescue and Emergency Management, Health Department, and Building Department approvals. With that, I'd like to stop sharing my screen and turn the floor over to the landowner, Mr. Larry Lang, for any additional details or answering questions the board may have. And Mr. Lang, you are muted. And Mr. Suter, there you go.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Lang. Please go ahead.
I appreciate your time and I apologize for not being there in person. Just overcome by events. Explained that to Chris. So once again, I apologize for that. Just real quick, the property in question is an equestrian center. We board horses. We conduct horse shows, clinics annually, and that type of activity. We recently purchased the 80 acres behind us, 79 acres as Chris described. And that opens another line of business for us, which is trail riding. The property currently has existing trails, and we would like to be able to allow some people to come in and stay for the weekend. There are stalls on the back part of the property. The 2 FAR buildings that you see in the back are like 24 stalls. They can board their horses there, do their camping, and ride the trails, for a weekend fee. So that's why we asked for a request to change of the zoning to allow for that activity and the additional business.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Is there any board questions or discussions from Mr. Lang or Mr. Sladen? Mr. Sladen, I have a question for you, and I'm not sure that it's necessary or not, but I noticed there wasn't a condition of number of nights as far as staying. Was there any discussion in the planning commission about that?
Not on this particular application. We obviously have 2 scheduled public hearings, and so the next one did include a consecutive night stay of the planning commission did recommend approval on the next one, but the guests are limited to 3 consecutive night stays. And so if the board would like to have a stipulation on how long a particular camper can stay on the property through the special exception permit, it would be appropriate at this time to set that condition. And that could be limited to 3 consecutive nights or however y'all see fit, obviously.
But there is a maximum number per day, correct?
There is, yes, there is a particular, as far as the existing conditions, the campground is limited to 2 spots, and it would be limited to the area as shown on the development plan. And there is, the campground is limited to 4 vehicles, not to exceed 10 people, and that would pertain to the campground only. But currently, it does not have a maximum number of consecutive nights stayed.
And the idea behind that would be to limit people that might choose to long-term living in one of these sites. Is that
Potentially, yes.
I'm sorry, I missed maybe the answer to David's question of, was that discussed at the planning commission? I didn't quite.
No, I'm sorry, not to answer your question directly. On this particular application, I do not believe it was discussed at the planning commission.
Mr. Lang, what are your thoughts on consecutive night stays per camper?
It would not be a problem whatsoever to limit it. It's really a weekend thing for us and sometimes single overnight stays. So if you choose to limit it to 3 days or less, that is fine with me.
I don't want to limit you too much. I mean, I was thinking 7 nights or something, just to give you adequate time. The concern, I think, is with some of our And I know we shouldn't be bringing in other things, but we have some campgrounds in the community where there's not a limit and we have some long-term people. And so putting a consecutive night stay on it, I think would be wise. And
I agree wholeheartedly. And also with the boarders that are my main customers there, I don't think they would appreciate much with people staying much longer than that anyway, because that is my main line of business is the equestrian center.
And the other question I had, Mr. Slayton, was there any discussion around signage as far as where the campers would to adequately direct the campers as they're coming in or going out, or would they be greeted by Mr. Lang or someone on his property to direct them?
No, that really was not discussed. There's obviously some there's a sign ordinance pertaining to signs that would be it would have to be outside the road right of way. But in my opinion, we do have some flexibility of internal signage. So Mr. Lang may be a better resource as far as checking in, checking out who greets them, that type of thing, or instructions given to make sure they know where the campsite is.
Yeah, and if I could say, we greet everyone that comes on there, even if they get there at 9 o'clock at night. Some of our horse trailers come in for overnight stays that are traveling, and we do the same thing. We always meet them. We always show them where everything is, emergency contacts, how to get a hold of us, where the fire extinguishers are, all of that.
Okay, thank you. I was just, those horse trailers are quite large. You hate for them to get on wrong road or get turned around or something like that.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, that does it.
All right, let's open the public hearing. Is there anyone signed up wishing to address the board? Is there anyone online wishing to address the board?
Don't see any hands up. Oh,
Is there any written comments that need to be read in?
Yes, sir. I do have one written comment.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Flynn.
This is the following comments represent the position of Keith E. Putbreeze, Barbara M. Putbreeze, Elizabeth A. Barker, and Gary M. Barker with addresses of 170, 175 Cross Country Lane, Natural Bridge. Though we are not directly adjacent to 100 Equus Loop, we now share a property line via land tax parcel 97-A-14, recently acquired by the same owner. We do not foresee any adverse issues resulting in a special exception being granted as requested. In fact, we have been under the assumption that camping was already permitted, in parentheses, grandfathered, and as it has been a consistent amenity for previous owners of that facility. The parcel at 100 Equus Loop is not governed by the restrictive covenants that recently acquired. Again, in parentheses, tax map number 97-A-14, parcel is. As long as the camping is confined to parcel 9714B, we take no exception to the special exception being approved. Thank you for your time. Signed, Keith Putbreeze et al. And that's the only written comment I have.
Okay. Is there anyone in person wishing to address the board? Please come forward, state your name, Magisterial District.
Shall Torben Pedersen, Natural Bridge District. I'm going to speak in favor of this special exception permit. For those who may not be fully aware of the lay of the land, that this particular area that is laid out is not even visible from Highway 11. There's a hill and it comes in behind the big barn. So we have other residential areas, especially a neighbor of mine down on Falling Spring Road that was granted two parking areas for motor homes when he purchased the land. This was about 6-7 years ago. And so I can't see why we should have a problem with a small area like that. And with, I know that the owners are not going to come out there and have people stay all year long. So I just speak in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Anyone else wishing to address the board? At this time, we'll close the public hearing. Same board discussion.
I believe in the special exception process, and that's why we're here. And every application can be different, however nuanced. But some things, you just mentioned, and some things that we have had from concerns for other campgrounds, such as the greeting, the signage, getting all that stuff right. Does the 911, does the 911 address, does Google recognize that and it gets them to the right place and not 2 houses down in somebody else's yard? All these things are sort of standard, I think, for all of them. So what's bugging me here at this moment is I'm not necessarily against the application, but we keep having these same kinds of questions for everything. And it doesn't seem like we have sort of a standard answer to those. So it just seems like that's good planning commission study kind of thing. So it's just making me a little nervous that we
might have forgotten
we're
something. Right.
continually getting applications. It's something I think we want to incentivize. We just need to make sure that it's happening as fairly and efficiently as it can. So I'm just not sure what to do right at the moment. Are we out of time on this one, Ms. Huffman, with required response? How the number of days are.
No, you could set it over to the next meeting and still be within the time constraints for taking action. That is the end of July meeting.
Yeah. Well, I don't know exactly what to do. I'm not.
Mr. Lewis, can I ask you?
Sure.
Is it that you're afraid that, like the 7-day limit, that maybe we've left something off that should have been considered? And I feel the same way you do. I would like to, the bare minimum of the things that are just standard, 911, night stay,
Or you want it to
all
be
of those
greeting, yeah.
things. Right. I would feel really good that those things are checked off the list and they are standardized, a little more standardized than what we're seeing.
I think we're having the same concern there. And I think Mr. McDaniel was too with some of his questions. Chris, just exploring that opportunity, the planning commission would meet again before our meeting, right? So that they could take another crack at this if that was.
So not that I know of. The planning commission's taken action on it. So I don't think there's anything they've held a public hearing, they've taken action on it. And so they passed it along to you. There's nothing that I know of that would send it essentially back to the planning commission. I will comment, obviously we have had other campgrounds that we know did not greet people, and there's no manager on site. As far as the 911, the emergency management office has been out there and has no concerns on usually what they're looking for is the grade of the road, bridges, any overhanging trees, those type of things. And as far as the 911 address, this is usually when we have problematic addresses, if you will, is when the activity is going on and it does not have an address or it does not have an established address. So, or again, we've ran into other situations where it's multiple people, multiple addresses on one particular access point. But this particular one is well defined. It is in the Google system as 100 Aquarius Loop. So I don't think getting to the property or once you're on the property, finding the camping spot or going to another property trying to look for a camping spot is not going to be the same issue in this one as we had. The one I remember most recently was Gilmore Mill Road, I believe, in the southern part of the county with the concern on not having a greeter there. That one ended up not having a greeter on the site at all. And there was some problems finding the address or excuse me, finding the site because it was not addressed. There was no address associated with that piece of land. Again, in this case, it does have an address. I do agree. I do agree. And we have been consistent as far as the planning commission on the number of spots, what the spots include, either recreational vehicles or primitive. We've been consistent on the campground is limited to X number of vehicles, not to exceed X number of people. The essential catch-all with approval contingent upon VDOT, fire and rescue, health department, building department approvals. But I do agree. In the future, we should address, including this one. I agree on this one, and in the future that it'd be proactive to include a total number of X number of days, consecutive night stays.
Is it always standard, Chris? Is it always standard about the waste, that no waste can be disposed on site?
Yes, I mean, there's existing state and federal law saying that you can't, improperly dispose of waste. So this application, and to back up a little bit, the health department gets into the waste disposal when it's 3 or more what they call self-contained units. We call them RVs. But if you have 3 or more, it's my understanding with direct conversation with the health department, if you have 3 or more RVs, self-contained units, you're required to either have a disposal system on site that they hook up to, or have a dumping station, one common dumping station that they can dump on before they leave. This particular one is limited to 2 camping spots, so there's no requirement from the health department on that aspect. But there's certainly existing state and federal law stating that you can't, dump waste on the ground.
All right, back to the nights. Do you have any, or do you have any recollection of that being discussed generally, and is there?
No, sir, not in the past. That has not been discussed or part of the conditions in the past. But I do think being proactive and knowing some of the issues with existing longer term campgrounds, that would be there is certainly merit to include that in this one and the upcoming applications when we receive them.
Again, I'm not trying to, Mr. Lang said it was basically a weekend campground, 3 nights. I don't want to be too limiting to what they may or may not be able to do.
That was not my goal either. Absolutely.
I would be fine with maybe a 10-night, because at least it's a defined period of time that would cover if someone wanted to come for, maybe a Friday through a Sunday, it's the following weekend, Sunday or something like that, a week-long stay. So, I'm not trying to limit their ability to do business. I just think it needs to be defined in some way that there's a limit and that it needs to be addressed.
But are we comfortable with that across the board? I would like a number that we can use across the board.
Generally accepted.
Yeah, and 10 days might be not a great idea. I don't know. But maybe what we're asking is that the planning commission would standardize that for us.
Well, yeah, since we can't get them to study this one again, I think maybe David's suggestion, I'm fine with that. I think that's a good number. And as Chris said, they're willing to,
not to exceed 10 days, not to exceed 10 days.
Not to exceed 10 nights stay.
10 nights.
So what I have is guests are limited. It could be proposed condition number 5, guests are limited to 10 consecutive night stays.
Yeah, that suits me. Does it suit everyone else on the board as an amendment to what Mr. Layden has presented?
And certainly the applicant seems to be that suits them. So.
All right. So is there a motion to approve with the amendment of the maximum of 10 consecutive night stay?
Can I just interject? I'm not necessarily comfortable across the board with that, given the location that these might be in. School nights are different. If you're in a more congested place, that I am not suggesting that 10 nights across the board would work for all our campgrounds.
Yeah, this is
But
for this particular one.
particular one. I mean,
And the-
he's
and the-
only asking for 3, so.
Well, but we don't want to limit it, but I mean, the planning commission, to everyone's point here, I believe, should discuss that and decide for future applications, what's a standard number that we would like to see. And that would be their job. This one just pertains to this particular application.
Okay, because there was nothing in it. Right, so, okay.
If the people are staying there for the weekend, 3 nights, then they leave, but leave their RV there and then come back the following weekend, is that considered still camping even though they're not there?
I would think as long as the RV is on property, that would be your consecutive nights.
It's, yeah.
That, I mean, it's not necessarily the people, it's the RV being there. Would that be correct, Mr. Sladen, or?
Currently it reads guests are limited to 10 consecutive night stays. And in this particular case, I would say it would be actually the guests staying there, not necessarily the camper being on property. But again, in this particular case, I don't think you're going to have, the historically speaking, the guests associated with this are associated with horse shows, horse events at the location. And so I guess long and short of it, I'm comfortable with guests are limited to 10 consecutive night stays, but that would include guests being on the site for 10 consecutive stays. I'm sorry, 10 consecutive night stays.
They got to have something to stay in. That's why I think the camper would be, what, as long as the camper's on property. Ms. Huffman, do you have anything to interject on that?
Well, I think if you are considering the limitation to apply to the RVs, we should include that, given the zoning administrator's interpretation, because otherwise you could have that there year round with guests just popping in for 10 nights, going
We're
home.
saying they don't live there,
coming
which
back
happens.
and spending 10 nights. I would suggest that we add
The 10
something
consecutive
saying that
nights
the
is the
guests or
RV.
the
or camper.
RVs and or the RVs.
Yes,
And or, yes.
I agree.
Why are we extending this longer than what it's requested or asked for?
Actually, I don't think there was anything in there.
There wasn't. He's saying that it, may be a 3-night, a weekend type thing. My thing is, I'd hate to do it for 3 nights and then Mr. Lang have to come back in a couple months and say, you know what, we've had some people want to stay an entire week. So that's why I'm just trying to give them a little extra time. I don't think the 10 nights will ever come into play based off what Mr. Lang said. I didn't want to be too confining and too limiting to his operation.
Well, I was just looking at, of course, that's me, the opposite direction way. If somebody wanted to stay longer, and Mr. Lang can say, no, the ordinance will not permit 3 nights and cut that. That doesn't mean when you leave that you can't turn around and come back the following week.
Right, but this existing one does not have any restrictions. So by putting even putting a 10-day, it's more restrictive than the planning commission has passed, correct? So.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve as presented with the amendment of adding a 10 consecutive night stay limit for guest or RV?
Yes, so moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well. Thank you, Mr. Lang.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Okay, next we have Select Equine Properties LLC, application for a special exception permit for a campground and agricultural general uses A2 zoning district. Mr. Suter, I believe you have a statement to read.
I do. As opposed to the last one, this one actually adjoins my property. And so I received notice of all joiners. So I abstain from all matters, participation or discussion as county administrator related to the application of Select Equine Properties LLC, and my disclosure statement required under Virginia Code 2.2-3115F is on file with the clerk to the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Sladen or Ms. Huffman, who will be presenting this? Mr. Sladen?
I'll jump
So
in.
would you like me to do the normal format as far as presenting?
Well, I don't know that that's necessary, given the situation.
Yeah, if I was just
Okay.
a couple questions.
So I'll try to start off the discussion, and Ms. Huffman, you may follow. So as of this morning, there's been some conversation on who is required to sign the application on behalf of Select Equine Properties LLC. And essentially, I've asked Mr. Robertson to confirm that Ms. Robertson is required to is not required to sign the application to move forward. And so I do know there's been some discussion on whether we hold the public hearing tonight, go through the normal format on me doing a presentation, turning the floor over to the applicant in this case, hold the public hearing, but also discussion whether it would be beneficial to all parties just to delay essentially opening this agenda item. With that, I'd like, or Ms. Huffman may have something to add to that, and I'm obviously happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
Ms. Huffman?
My concern is that without the proper parties having signed the application, the board does not have jurisdiction over this application. So it's you could take action, but it wouldn't apply but to the one party's interest, if in fact both parties are required to sign the application. And we don't, I've searched the State Corporation Commission for a copy of the operating agreement that would specify that information. Those are not available publicly. And even though I looked, I knew that it wouldn't be there. I thought it might happen across something, but I didn't. I believe that without there being a member manager designated to act on behalf of the entity, and with the knowledge that we have a written statement from one of the members saying that this application was not approved, I just don't see how it can go forward under the current circumstances. So
what I'm hearing is let's delay this until all the proper documentation is received by Mr. Sladen and reviewed by you, and then it can be brought back to the board at the appropriate time.
that's correct.
Okay.
Is there a time limit on that? Are we not required to act within a certain time frame? Because back to the original question of, we're not sure we have a complete application.
I'm not sure if it's a void application that the time limits even apply.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, okay.
But I haven't looked at it from that perspective.
I know there are, periods that we are required to act.
There are, but they are usually action within so many days of holding the public hearing. But if the public hearing is delayed at the request of one of the owners, or not held at all at the request of one of the people who has an interest,
Gotcha.
then I don't see those applying.
I mean, it sounds like, I would be all for hearing the information and moving forward, but it sounds like there's some dispute amongst the owners. They need to figure that out, get it everything corrected or the information provided to Mr. Sladen, and then obviously you can review as our county attorney, and then we can move forward at the appropriate time.
That's correct.
Do we
Does
need,
that need to be any type of action by the board to delay it, or is it good enough for what I've said?
I think what you've said is good enough.
We'll be happy to hear it at the appropriate time when they get everything figured out. Okay. So we will move along to the County of Rockbridge, application for a zoning text amendment to define and provide for an auction facility by special exception in the general business B1 zoning district. Mr. Sladen, are you working on this?
Yes, sir. Prior to the April Planning Commission meeting, the chair of the Planning Commission instructed staff to include an agenda item to discuss a zoning text amendment for auction sales yard. At the April 13th, 2022 meeting, the Office of Community Development staff reviewed its findings on how other jurisdictions define and provide for auction facilities in various zoning districts. During the May 11th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission, the Commission directed staff to develop a zoning ordinance to define and provide for auction facilities in the general business zoning district, that'd be the B1 zoning district, as a use by special exception, and to advertise a public hearing for their June 8th, 2022 meeting. At the June 8th, 2022 meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed the draft ordinance and held its public hearing on the proposed zoning text amendment. The Planning Commission has recommended approval of the draft ordinance for the zoning text amendment. So of course you have the draft ordinance in your package, and essentially it provides for defining auction facilities under 302-19A as a building and or area, including outdoor area used for the sale of goods, wares, merchandise, or equipment to the highest bidder. And then, so that's the definition of an auction facility. And then per the instruction of the Planning Commission, it provides for as a use by special exception, it being auction facilities, obviously, as a special exception under 605.03-26. With that being said, this is happy to answer any questions that the board may have, and this does include a public hearing.
Is there any questions from the board or discussion from Mr. Sladen?
just clear for me, I think I know the answer, but I want to be sure. We did not have a 302.19A, right?
No, sir, that's correct. We did not have the current ordinance. The current ordinance in the business zone provides for, by special exception, livestock markets and what a term called sales pavilions. And so I was uncomfortable, working with it. There is an applicant that has a particular site in mind in the Fairfield area in a business zone. He approached us on, how to start this. Looking at the current definitions, I was uncomfortable that it was clear that a sales pavilion would include the auction part of it. So based on my recommendation, I thought it'd be beneficial again to all parties, essentially to go through this public process and define what a zoning facility is, and then provide it for use by special exception. With that being said, if this is approved, someone could, landowner applicant could make an application for a special exception.
What was your line of thinking? So once you got 302.19A, that we're going to have it, or that we have that definition now, and that's in general. No, then you're saying in general business. I guess to boil it down, why is it? Do you not want that to be a by right in business? Does it need
the planning commission? The planning commission discussed potential conflicts with existing businesses, some existing businesses, and an open aired outdoor auction. So they did recommend it being a use by special exception for that reason.
Thank you.
So any other questions? All right, then at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Or anybody signed up to address the board? Is there any written comments that need to be read in?
I do not have any written comments.
Is there anyone online wishing to address the board?
No one has a hand up.
And is there anyone in person who didn't have opportunity to sign up wishing to address the board? Okay, at this time, we'll close the public hearing. Any other board discussion? Is there a motion to approve as presented?
So move.
And a second?
A second?
Okay. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well. All right, let's see where we're at here. Board comments. I believe there's been some discussion on possible appointment of a Batty Broadband Committee. Mr. Suter, you want to talk about that?
Yes, I had approached Chair McDaniel and we've been, or I really have been working with different groups on a new VATI grant through DHCD. It is due toward the end of August. And I would like to request a ad hoc board committee to discuss and help me with some of those things to bring back to the full board.
Now, we have an ad hoc committee, which is made up of myself and Mr. Lyons. However, I know that Mr. Day is involved with RANA, so it may be a good idea to have him on that committee versus either me or Mr. Lyons. Any thoughts on that?
It's the board's pleasure. I do think having the RANA connection does, well, Mr. Day is immersed in it at least once a month in broadband discussions, so.
Would you be okay serving on that?
This is me.
Is there anyone else who would like to serve, Mr. Day?
I'd be happy to if you need someone. But if you'd want to do it.
Is there any
You're gonna put me on the
clarification?
spot.
It doesn't matter to me, and it doesn't sound like,
People, right?
I would like to have two folks to bounce some ideas off of to just as the board to share and to help communicate back with other board members as well, obviously one-on-one.
if it's okay, Mr. Lyons, as I'll be coming off of the finance committee and you'll be coming on,
Okay.
if it's okay, I'll help with Mr. Day on this. All right. Is the board okay with me and Mr. Day? Any disagreements there?
Most of the time.
All right. So we'll do that. Is there any additional comments, Mr. Suter, Ms. Huffman, board? We do not have a meeting the second Monday of July, is that correct?
That is correct.
So our
Our
next
adopted schedule.
meeting will be the fourth Monday of July.
Correct.
Okay. If there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second? All right. Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
And Chair votes yes as well. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
You.